Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Glad to be back here today with you for another Zoom class sponsored by Michaels. Today, I'm happy to introduce the Liquitex team. We have Liquitex Acrylics. I'm Jeannie Breedy. I'm the marketing director, and I oversee this brand. But with us today to help moderate is Christina. She is the global brand manager, so she's going to help out with all those technical questions. Just put everything in the chat. And of course, we have Marla, who if you've been with us before, she has hosted several classes. She's got she's a great artist and she's quite diversified. And now she's going to present to you Liquitex 101. So enjoy.
All right. Thank you guys for sharing some of your afternoon with me. I'm really excited to talk about Liquitex Acrylics with you guys. I'm going to move that here. I know at least here it's freezing cold, so hopefully it's not too miserable where you are and that you're inside and having a chance to have some you time learning about paint. Liquitex has been a big part of my life. I've worked with it for many years, and I'm a little biased, but it's my favorite painting medium. So excited to share it with you today. If you have questions, don't hesitate. We have lots. I'm happy to help with any questions you may have, and Jeannie and Christina are definitely going to be great with that too. So ask away as you have questions. I find that it's really valuable to know what you're most interested in talking about. We're going to talk about what acrylics are. We're going to talk about some techniques, and we're going to focus or do a deeper dive into 3 of our color series. 2 professional, being our soft body and our heavy body, and 1 that's our everyday acrylic called Basics. And so we're going to focus primarily on those 3 ranges. Okay. So first of all, what is acrylic? Well, I think it's important to, and by the way, I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and I know that's just my way of sharing info. So you can shout out the answer if you want. But anyways, what is acrylic? Let me start by saying what acrylic is not. Acrylic is not watercolor. Watercolor is basically pigment. Oh no, that's my phone. I thought I turned it off. Classic, it was my parents. Okay. Sorry about that. I thought I put on do not disturb. Anyways, acrylic is not watercolor. Watercolor is pigment and gum arabic. And what you do is to do a watercolor painting is you have water and you use your brush to wet the paint and apply it to watercolor paper. The paper becomes the binder for watercolor. Okay, that's not acrylic. Oil paint is another popular medium, and it's basically pigment and linseed oil. Linseed oil is expressed from flax seeds. Okay, that is not acrylic. Oils require turpentine or mineral spirits as a solvent. That's not acrylic either. Okay, now acrylics can be watercolor-like and oil-like, but they're also quite different. So I think now is a good time to show you what I'm working with here. And then I messed up my little phone. So. There we go. All right. Oh, that's going to bug me, guys. Sorry. Okay. I mentioned watercolor needs paper. Acrylics do not. This is acrylic paint on its own. There's no paper, no canvas, no wood. This is also something that you could not do with oil color. Okay, the linseed oil binder and that turpentine solvent create a much more brittle paint film. So acrylics create what we call a discrete paint layer. Ooh, it's so discrete. But it's a paint layer that is not dependent on a surface. Okay, so you can have this paint layer and leave it as it is. You could cut it into shapes and affix it to another surface. You can do all sorts of interesting things with it, but obviously this shows one of the most beautiful parts of acrylic, and that has to do with its durability and flexibility. Okay, it's really hard not to sit here and keep messing with it because it yields so easily. I've had this sample with me for years now, and it's lasted no problem, but it is a chance to mention that acrylics are afraid of the cold. And what that means is when acrylics get colder than about 45 degrees Fahrenheit, they reach something called the glass transition phase. And what that means is that what that means is if you were to roll or manipulate your acrylic painting when it's cold, you're going to get cracking in the surface. When it's brought back to a comfortable room temperature, it's going to regain this wonderful flexibility. Okay, so it's a reversible process, but just be careful if you're in cold areas of climate that you don't unroll or bump into your acrylic paintings at that point. This sample is another chance to show the flexibility and the adhesion properties of acrylics. And what I mean by that is if I were to wad this in a ball and come back in a couple of weeks and try and unpeel it, chances are I'm going to have a really hard time doing it because acrylics stick to just about any surface, including itself. Okay, so what that means is you want to be sure to never store your acrylic paintings face to face. Always do them back to back. And then when it comes to it, if you need to store it, like I had this sample, you can use palette paper or some other type of interleafing paper to roll it up. Okay, that way when you unroll it, it's not going to stick to itself. Make sense? You guys good with that? Okay, this is probably not the most romantic thing to talk about in the world of painting, but I do think it's important to just mention it briefly. If you could imagine that you could zoom in with your eyes to a wet acrylic paint film, these are the three basic components you're going to see. This beach ball shape, that's the polymer molecule. These meteorite shapes, that's the pigment or the color of the paint. And then the Mickey Mouse heads are, of course, H2O or water. Acrylics dry through a process called evaporation. And if you've ever used acrylics, you know that means that they dry fairly quickly. Okay, so when the water evaporates, those Mickey Mouse heads take a hike. A pretty cool thing happens to that acrylic paint film. Those beach ball shapes actually change into more of a crystalline structure and they become attracted to one another. And at the intersection of those crystals, the pigment particles are actually trapped on the surface. Now, why would that be valuable? Well, if you've got pigment trapped in a film on a surface, it's going to be a much more permanent surface, a much more permanent painting on a surface. It's also important to understand that because there's a really easy way to damage that nice balance of polymer and pigment. And that has to do with adding too much water. Okay, acrylics are water soluble. The ones that we know today by Liquitex, they were developed in 1955 by a man named Henry Levison. And he developed the very first waterborne acrylics. So we know that water can thin the color and clean your brushes. But too much water can over thin those binder particles. And when the water evaporates, they just can't come together and interlock and create a dry, stable paint film. It's a much weaker paint film. And this is an example of what it might look like. So this is acrylic paint right out of the tube up here. You could call this the mass tone. That's color right out of the tube. And when you put acrylic in a wash with water, like I've done here, you can get beautiful effects. But down here, this is a much more vulnerable acrylic paint film. That's because there is simply too much water added. Now, I said acrylics can be watercolor-like, but this is a case where you'd want to add acrylic mediums to the paint to get more of this effect if you're using acrylic paint. And a colleague of mine will be talking all about acrylic mediums in a few weeks, so be sure and check that out. But let me show you what I mean by a weak paint film. I'm going to just take this brush, add some water to it. And when I'm working this, I can re-wet this color that I think is nice and stable and permanent. You guys see that? Oh, there you go. Can you see how that kind of re-wet the surface? This may not matter a whole lot depending on how you paint, but I know something I did all the time in school. I was broke. I was in school. And so I was buying color and I was buying acrylic color and I was watering it down extremely. So I was getting these thin washes. And what would happen each time I'd put a new layer of color down, I'd remove a layer that I'd put down underneath. So I thought it was just something I was doing wrong. It had nothing to, I guess it was, I was adding too much water, but I had no idea that it was that I was over thinning the acrylic paint. So that's an important principle, I think, to understand. You don't have to think about it while you're working. Just when Liquitex talks about too much water, we mean more than about 25% water to 75% color or medium. That's just a nice little ratio you can keep in mind. Okay. So let's talk about even more color now. All right. This is a hand painted chart that represents most of our heavy body and our soft body color. Any of these resources that I may show you, please know that they're available at liquitex.com. Okay, so you'll be able to find this at liquitex.com and look up any of our color charts as you need them. But I think it's important to kind of show what some of the information you will find on these charts. Okay, and I'm going to grab a tube of color to also show that a lot of this information is on there as well. So let's take this color, Quinacridone Magenta. That's a mouthful, right? Well, what I like about Liquitex is for so many of our colors, we try to put the actual pigment names, which I ought to name the color rather than just making something up that, oh, maybe you call it, bubblegum pink or whatever. But if it's Quinacridone Magenta, you start to learn pigment families, like we have Quinacridone Red Orange, Quinacridone Crimson, and so on. And what that does for you is when you start to learn pigment families, you understand the behavior of the color. And if there's one thing I'm about, it's economy, okay? When I'm at a store, I want to buy colors knowing what I'm picking. I don't want to just do like, again, one of my used to habits. I would go to the store, buy what I saw on sale, or did I like the name of it? That's a cool color. But I would not pay attention to all the other attributes that this information can show you. And here's what I mean. So S3 on the tube, Series 3 here. Series just has to do with how we price our professional series color. Series 1 to Series 5. This has to do with the expense of the pigment and what it takes to mill or manufacture that particular pigment. So in our professional ranges, you will see the series information because we're not sparing any expense when it comes to making a good quality cadmium, for example, and that requires extra time and expense to do that. So that's all the series info is about. So that you see that reflected here. This white square on the tube and on the chart, probably pretty tiny on the chart, but on the tube, you hopefully can see it. Tiny white square shows you that this is a transparent color. Why would that be valuable? Well, if you're someone who's into glazing, which we'll talk about a little later, but that's basically a technique where you stack transparent veils of color on top of each other. It's really valuable to use naturally transparent pigments. So again, when it comes to buying a color, if you're glazing, you may want to choose the Quinacridone Magenta over, the Pearl Crimson, which are similar in hue, but Pearl Crimson is opaque, okay? So that's one reason, for example, on this chart, we have so many reds is because there are different transparencies in the different colors, okay? We have opaque colors as well, and that will be represented by a black square. We also have translucent color, which is obviously in between the two, okay? What else to show? Okay, Lightfastness. So Mr. Levison, the inventor of Liquitex, he was also kind of a rock star in the art materials world, even before coming up with or developing Liquitex Acrylic. And one of his innovations was the Lightfastness rating system. And all Lightfastness is about is testing how permanent that color will be in response to UV light. How long is it going to last? When is it going to fade? So in our professional series color, we only offer Lightfastness 1 or 2 rated colors, and you'll see that on the tubes in this little sunlight symbol. You'll see it on our color charts or on our website. It will be listed by Roman numerals, 1 or 2. Okay, just to give you an idea, we're talking about 100 years plus for Lightfastness 1, about 75 years plus for Lightfastness 2, and then Lightfastness 3 we do offer in our everyday acrylic, the basics, in the fluorescent range, because come on, these are just fun colors that sometimes you need for different projects, but fluorescents just are not going to be permanent in a lifetime, right? So we offer them because they have a value, but they're not going to be the same standard as our Lightfastness 1 or 2 color, right? So that's another, I think, yeah.
Question for you. We're getting some really good feedback, really great information. Could you just bring up the your tube a little bit, and then just an example from the color chart, so then we could direct people to the website as well, liquitex.com, and you could view all this information. And Christine, if you want to add in, I think some of these things can be downloaded as well.
Yes, there are a lot of great downloadable resources, including this color chart that you see here. So feel free to download the heavy body and soft body color chart. It'll have all of this information.
Yeah, and then too, on the website, when you click on the color swatch or color sample, all of this info will pop up too. And I find that really useful because when you're getting down and dirty and you're picking individual colors, you can click on it and it will reference, you know, the great majority of this detail, if I'm remembering correctly. Okay. Anything else, Jeannie, related to that?
No, we're all good. Everyone's, like I said, I directed people to the Liquitex website because, as Christina said, there's a wealth of information out there. And just continue on. You're giving some really good factual information, really good resources. Thanks.
Here's another example of showing transparency versus opacity. Okay, these colors. It's not about less pigment in these compared to these. It's just that the actual pigment particles themselves are naturally more transparent. Whereas these, if you could look at these under a microscope, they'd almost look like tiny pieces of metal, because that's what most of them are. They're obtained from the earth, and the tiny pieces of pigment are more opaque, so the overall paint film is more opaque. So this is really great for artists who are working with impasto techniques, or maybe outdoors alla prima, and they just want to get the color down and leave it be and not have to fight transparency in that situation. So now I like this because it highlights how you can have similar hue, but the transparency will change what it will do for you. Okay. Now this is I think a valuable resource to keep in mind, and this has to do with if you're just starting out and you want to invest in soft body or heavy body. I think it's a good idea to, you know, maybe start small and start to get an idea of how to mix your own colors. And this is what we recommend for a primary palette: yellow medium azo, quinacridone crimson, and phthalocyanine blue. Okay. Again, once you start getting used to pigment names, you'll see quinacridone a lot, you'll see phthalo a lot. They're heavy hitters in a lot of color palettes. And you can see what these three colors do is they give you clean secondary color mixes: your violet, your green, and your orange. But then what's cool is once you get comfortable with that, you can start getting all the other fun colors that will expand your palette. And also with acrylics, sometimes it can be difficult to mix a whole palette of a lot of different colors. So a lot of our range have some pre-mix options. So you can just grab a tube, open it up, and get, you know, go to town painting without having to mix everything. But this is true. This is the palette for both soft body and heavy body. Okay. And we're going to, this is one last part, and then we're going to get into the differences in those two series. But this was enlightening to me when I first heard about it. There's lots of ways to talk about color. You can say this is a warm color, this is a cool color. That's fine, color temperature. But I think another valuable attribute is to consider color bias. This has to do with colors in relation to one another. So this red, in comparison, we'd say this is more of like a true shade red, right? Where over here, we could say this has more of a yellow bias and this has more of a blue bias. Why would that matter? Well, if you want to make a really vibrant, kicky kind of orange, you may want to choose your red that's already leaning towards yellow to mix with yellow, because it's going to give you a really vibrant color. Does that mean you can't use this blue bias red to make an orange? No. But when you look at the color chart, what's the complement to orange? It's blue, right? We learn in color theory that blue, or that when you mix complements, they tone down or gray down. Could be exactly what you want, but this is again why we offer so many different reds, yellows, and blues, because they will offer so many different color mixing possibilities. Okay. All right, so let's squeeze out some color and do a little mixing. Now I'm going to use our heavy body color, but again, this is really kind of just to show off I guess what I'm trying to say, the color attributes, how they will affect a mix. So this is a color called Cadmium-free red medium. And this is one called phthalo blue, phthalocyanine blue. All right, and we're going to mix the two to get a violet. Oh my gosh, what do you think? Does it look totally awesome? Have I gone to the 80s and become a Valley girl? No, it does not look like what most of us would call a vibrant, luscious violet. No, right? Could be the perfect color for what you're doing, but let's try a different red with the same blue. And there we go. So we're going to use Quinacridone Magenta and more of my phthalo blue. You can see the difference already, right? I'm going to take a little less of that phthalo blue because once you start to use phthalo colors, you'll recognize that they have a very strong tinting strength. All right, what do you think? Better, right? And notice, and you can hear it too, but you notice how I'm scraping back. I mentioned mass tone is right out of the tube, and undertone of the color is when it's in a thin wash or with white added. This is another quick way to see undertone, and that's just to scrape it back on a light surface so you see the subtleties of the color, okay? So that's a much brighter violet that we get, and all we did was we changed the red, and it has to do with those individual pigment characteristics. It doesn't mean that Cadmium is a bad red. It just means that for making a violet with this blue, it's probably not the greatest choice. All right, you're going to get that toned down or more muted kind of dark value color. Whereas this, it's a blue bias red. Mixing with your blue is going to give you more of that violet vibrance. Okay. Any questions on that?
Actually, someone was just asking, which could be demonstrated by showing them the color wheel, that if you used instead of phthalo blue, that you used a warmer blue with the warmer red, you could kind of show like they would definitely get probably a more violet. If you see where you're going more towards the
oh, right. Yes. Yes. So the cadmium was more towards the yellow bias, and the when magenta was more towards the blue bias, right? Yeah. And the way we get that is, you know, yellow bias is this red over here is closer to the yellow, whereas this red over here is closer to the blue.
So if they chose a warmer blue, they'd get, you know, probably a much more vivid violet color rather than a deep saturated purple that you kind of were demonstrating.
Well, yes, this is a case where you get really into color theory, and this blues can either have a red bias or a green bias. So, because there are 4 biases, there's yellow, red, blue, and green. So doesn't break apart in the perfect triad, but I would guess if you took a greenish blue to mix with, the greenish blue is going to be better for mixing your greens, right? Whereas if you took a greenish blue to make a violet, it's all that too will be a slightly more muted violet, if that makes sense.
Someone on the chat also suggested that you just add more of the warmer red, which could also work.
Let's do that. Let's do that. That's a great point. That is it about volume? And so you want where do they want to add the more red to? They want to try and adjust.
Yeah, the top one, so just as an exercise, just to show, but if you could just take it with that one and just demonstrate there.
So if you add more red, yes, you see more red showing through, but you see how it's still not as much of a violet. Now we've got kind of more of a brick red. And even if I do it with a little more blue, still not what most of us would call violet, okay? And so it's not, that's a great point that they brought up. It's not about color volume. Like if I just keep piling red in here, you know, what's going to happen? Or if I pile, because that's how you lose paint in a mix. That's how you, and I'm all about economy with paint materials because they're not cheap if you're buying quality materials. And so what you want to do is use them to your advantage. And if you're trying to get this red with this blue to make this violet, it's not going to happen. You're just going to waste your paint trying to correct it over and over and over and over again. So that's where if you use the pigment characteristics to your advantage, you buy the right tubes and put them together. Now you're going to get the mix right away, and you're not going to have to, you know, struggle trying to correct a mix that's kind of gone awry, depending on what you're trying to do. I mean, I love this color actually, but it's not really a violet. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Marla. That's really, yeah, that demonstration really helped, because look at all the different colors that you've created, you know, from, I actually do like that burgundy brick color. That's really good.
Good. Sure.
Appreciate it.
Okay. That was a great question. So, all right. Let's talk a little bit about when you're buying colors, you may see there's a color called cadmium red, and then next to it, or cadmium red light, and next to it, you'll see cadmium red light hue. You might be like, well, the cadmium hue is less expensive. I'm just going to get that all the time. Well, whenever I see the word hue, that's my cue that a synthetic color is being used to replace the genuine color in, like the cadmium, for example. Synthetics aren't bad. It just means that they're going to behave differently than the genuine cadmium would, like you see here. So this is cad red light with titanium white added. Cadmiums are naturally opaque, and so you get this nice kind of toned down tint of this cadmium red with the white. The cad red light hue, however, in the mass tone, they're very similar, very similar. But as soon as you add the same amount of white to this cad red light hue, you see how it goes into a tint, not a tint, but a tint much differently. It lightens it and turns it more pastel rather than just lightening the value subtly. Okay. Again, this isn't a bad color, but it's just a matter of when you purchase pigments, they have different characteristics, and a cadmium red light will perform differently than a cadmium red light hue. Hues were developed in the first place to either offer a studio experience that's, quote, safer because you're not having to use a genuine cadmium, or if you want to have it in a value series, you want to have a hue color to lower the cost. But there's always, you know, a price paid for that, in the sense that it's not going to mix the same as a genuine cadmium would. Now, I'm not going to get too much into this because I think it's going to be covered in other demos, but we have a newer series called Cadmium Free Red Light, or it's called Cadmium Free, but this is the Cadmium Free Red Light. And hopefully you can see how those two are very, very close in mass tone and in undertone. So this is a really unique offering in the acrylic materials world, because you're getting a pigment base that is not the genuine cadmium. So if you don't want to paint with heavy metals, you don't have to. You can keep that out of your studio, and instead have this cadmium free series that is practically on, or it's on parity with the genuine cadmium. Okay, but it's not that heavy metal base in the color. So does that make sense on why you might see a hue color? Hue is your cue that a synthetic pigment is being used. And so you're going to get some different mixing properties. Right?
Yeah, Marla, we have a question here. Is cadmium safe to use? So just, yeah, I think maybe if we could just touch on that a little bit more and just point out that cadmium is a heavy metal pigment and does not contain the AP seal, which you might see on the packaging for many of your products. It contains generic label, and I think that's one of the great benefits of the cadmium free, because you have the same working properties of a genuine cadmium, but without you know, that genuine cadmium pigment included. So yeah, there's the AP seal that you see on all of our cadmium free colors.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. And that seal just stands for approved product, meaning it's been tested by independent toxicologists to be safe for artist use. Doesn't mean you want to eat any of our paints, because on the tech line, we'd get calls from people saying, hey, I see your product's AP, non-toxic, I can eat it, right? Well, no, it looks delicious, but you still don't want to eat it. Just means if you incidentally get it into your system, your body's going to take care of it and flush it through without damage. Okay. All right. Okay, so that was kind of the base, I should say, the initial layout of what acrylics are. And I told you we're going to dive deeper into 3 series. So I like to start with our soft body color. Soft body was Henry Levis's first innovation for this water-borne acrylic. This is a set that I have. And it's actually where he got the name Liquitex. You can see that when you squeeze it out, it's creamy, like heavy cream texture. It has fantastic covering power. It's pre-filtered for use with airbrush. And actually I'm going to use, so this is Quinacridone Crimson I'm using here, and I'm going to use Ultramarine Blue. And guys, I know that the colors you have listed on your demo list for this workshop, I'm going to be using different ones. I'm going to be using them, but I'm also going to be using some different ones. This is really where I'm just playing with the color to show the attributes. So please don't let that stress you out if you don't have the exact colors. This is really just about playing with the attributes of what soft body paint is. So again, this is a Quinacridone Crimson with Ultramarine Blue, and you can see that it's very, very flow. It has a really nice flow to it, great covering power. It's one of our faster drying acrylic colors. But actually, I put quite a lot of color down, and I could cover this whole thing if I wanted to. It does really well for brush work. But I will tell you, it will not retain a lot of brush work. So a lot of times artists enjoy that if they're working with fine detail. They may not want to have a whole lot of evidence of brush stroke. So the soft body can do that for you. All right. Sorry, I can't talk and paint at the same time. Let me show off the bottles. So when Levison first, well, one of the earlier iterations of the packaging looked about like this, okay? And I will show it to show how cool the new bottles are. These have shoulders that made it really hard for artists to dig paint out of the corners. So in the new container, actually I wanted to get this one. This is my phthalo blue. In the new container, you can see that there are virtually no shoulders. Okay, so you can dig your brush in there when you're towards the end and scrape every bit of paint out of it, which is a great thing. You get a lot of use out of it. The packaging is recyclable. The cap is very easy to take off. It's a nice pop cap. You can do one-handed action there when you're speed painting mode, I guess, but you can pop the cap off. And then when you do, you're going to see this nozzle. And what's nice about this is it's a kind of a graduated tip that you can then take scissors and cut to whatever aperture you want. I usually just do it at the top. And then that gives you a narrow opening, or if you're going to squeeze it out mad and furiously, you can cut it down here and get a lot more flow out more quickly. Then you want to check if it's a new container, you're going to have a inner foil like this. This is to help keep it dry and stable when it's waiting to be used in storage. But then once you have it, you just make sure you have the cap on it tightly. And then you just put your nozzle cap back on. And then you're ready to go. This is my phthalo blue. But some other things to show, it has that information, the series, the transparency, the light fastness. The entire soft body has 100 colors in the palette, and they all come in the 2-ounce size. And Christina or Jeannie could help me, or the website can help me with, I know we have other sizes as well. I'm just not sure how many colors come in each of those sizes. I don't know if you guys.
So we have 100 in the 59 mil. We have 25 in a 237 mil, which is in 8-ounce container. And then we also have 25 in the 946 mil, which is a 32-ounce container. We also have black and white also available in gallons if needed.
Yes, gallons. We all need gallons, right? That's awesome. Well, speaking of gallons too, the great thing with the coverage of soft body is that it covers about 400 square feet. So that's pretty amazing. It's 400 square feet per 128 ounces, which is a gallon. Okay, now don't make me do the math if you're working smaller, but the math can be done. But the idea with that is you get quite a bit of coverage with soft body color. If you have a very rough surface that you're covering, you're going to use more paint than if it's very smooth. But anyway, so when you're done painting, you can snap the cap back on. The bottles are stackable. They're easily squeezable. I love this new packaging. So when you're at my
a lot of questions on viscosity. So just
Jeannie, the audio is garbled. What did you say?
I can jump in really quick. We have a few questions regarding the viscosity, and if you could just go over what viscosity refers to, and just show soft body is our lower viscosity acrylic.
Yes, perfect. Thank you for that question. So viscosity is just a term that has to do with how the color flows. That's not a Webster definition, but that's my understanding of that concept. So you can have low viscosity, like soft body is a lower viscosity. It flows nicely and smoothly. You can have high viscosity, which is what we're going to see in our heavy body color in the tube. Okay, so I'm going to squeeze this out. I use this for mixing, but I'm going to compare it in just a second to the soft body. So in fact, the labels used to have the high viscosity and soft and medium viscosity, but we wanted to kind of unify it and make it soft body to suggest that lower kind of flow, and heavy body to suggest a thicker texture. But viscosity just has to do with how it flows on the surface. Soft body being low, heavy body being thicker. I hope that answered it for you. That flow can help, I mentioned, with detail work, like you see here in the clouds. Just took, let me move this to the side real quick. I just took some of our freestyle brushes, and I did the base with this flat or this bright. Brush heads can have different names. They'll be round, they'll be filbert, they'll be flat or bright. Don't let it get too confusing, but there are reasons why you may want to choose one over another. The Liquitex brushes, let me just briefly mention that brushes have 3 main components. You have your handle. The silver part is called the ferrule, and then this is the brush head or the filaments, okay? With Liquitex, the ferrule is seamless, which is exactly what you want, because you won't get any weird seepage of water into the ferrule that can cause rotting of the wood and loosening of the bristles. Also, with our brushes, they are hand tied towards the midpoint of the filament, because if you could take off the ferrule, you'd see that this filament goes all the way to the base of the ferrule, and the tie would be right about here. This is helpful when you're painting, because you don't want to get little flakes of bristles all through your work, right? I would get that all the time when I just buy cheap brushes, because what they'll do is they'll cut them short and they'll be tied at the top, and eventually the hairs will just fall out. So that is the idea with our longer bristles. The shape of a flat is great for covering lots of area, and then that nice little crispy edge helps with kind of that tight line work that you may have. The other popular brush head I didn't have happens to be a round, like you see here, and most of us have used round. If you've ever gotten a little watercolor kit, they always come with a round brush head. But if a bright head and a round head could come together and have a brush child. They may have what they name filbert, which to me is my favorite brush head. Filberts combine the covering power of a flat with the rounded tip of a round brush. And so then you can cover and do detail work pretty nicely and easily on a surface. Quickly, let me mention the filaments on an acrylic brush. Just like our own hair can get limp in the shower because of water, the water changes the texture. If you put natural bristles into water, like you do with acrylics, if you're adding a little bit of water or if you're cleaning your brushes, natural hair like hog bristle would get limp. And the reason that can be an issue is as soon as it gets limp, you lose control over your paint, right? It's on a limper hair filament and you just don't have the same control. So by having synthetic filaments, that beefier snap and spring of the synthetics won't go away when you add water to it. Okay, so that's why our brushes are synthetic filament. That's just like a quick little brush intro there. This was done with soft body. You can also, of course, do other quick techniques. This was done with palette knife, just super quick, squeezing out soft body, using a palette knife to swipe it down. I like this sample too because I don't know if you can see it, but you see that shimmer? We do have some interesting colors that have interference effects, which just means that they'll flip from, say, gold to violet, or like a pearlescent between blue and orange. So they're called interference colors. This one is interference gold, and I think this switches to violet on a darker surface. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked, but that's just one of the beauty parts of our soft body range, that they have these interesting, I call them glam colors, but you get the idea with that. I mentioned that different paint series can help with techniques. This is a really basic example of glazing. Typically, you'd want to add a medium to your soft body color to thin it further. But if you start with naturally transparent colors and add a glazing medium, and like I said, my colleague is going to talk about that in a few weeks, the world of acrylic mediums, but you can add that to the soft body paint and start to stack the color, almost like you're looking through stacked pieces of stained glass. So it's a visual blend rather than a physical blend on a surface where you apply it to the surface. And then here's like a little more elaborate example of the soft body in a glazed format. So you guys get that idea, you're just layering these veils of color. Okay, I saw a question pop up about mixing the color. Yes, I'm definitely going to do that now. So
yeah, and Marla, I think when we go to, when you start speaking about heavy body, if you could also speak to the fact that they are able to be used together and speak to some of the differences. It's really just a viscosity difference rather than anything with pigment load. And they can absolutely be used on the same canvas and same piece of art.
Definitely. Yeah, that is the great thing about all of our acrylics, is that they can all live on the same surface. They work well together. They're very user friendly and they work well together. So yeah, I'm going to squeeze out some soft body. This is Quinacridone Magenta. And then, so I wanted to introduce heavy body before I squeeze it out. So this was one of Levinson, this was his second formulation he developed. If you're a painter and you're used to oil color, you might be intrigued by the new acrylic that has water as a solvent, but you may not dig on this softer texture. So in the early 60s, he developed what we call heavy body, which gives more of an oil-like texture, okay? You could say kind of a peanut butter or a toothpaste texture. I prefer the food examples, but this is the same color. This is Quinacridone Magenta soft body. This is Quinacridone Magenta in the heavy body, okay? And what Christina was saying is that soft body is not a watered down formulation of heavy body, okay? It's just that the chemistry of soft body is designed to allow that pigment and color to flow, have that lower viscosity than heavy body, where it's designed to bunch up and to hold knife work or brush stroke or whatever kind of mark making you want to put into it. Okay. So you can see that if I were to let this dry and come back, this heavy body texture would remain, and all of my knife stroking would remain here. Okay. This would remain as well, but you can see how it would be pretty impossible for me to try and beef up this soft body to get it to look exactly like this, unless I added an acrylic medium. And again, when you add something, whether it's water or like an acrylic medium, you're going to change the color brilliance. So if you just want to work with straight paint and have the same color load per volume per color, it's good to have some soft body colors in your palette and some heavy body. In fact, a really nice way to work, say you have a large mural and you're going to use some texture, but you don't need texture over the whole thing. Get yourself some soft body color, block in the large passages with the soft body, and then finish the more textural areas with the heavy body. So this is soft body phthalo blue, and I can certainly mix it in to the heavy body, and you can see they're going to have the same look, I mean the same hue. But as soon as I add some soft body, even though it's a lower viscosity or a softer texture, that heavy body Quinacridone Magenta allows me to hold the texture. It's a little less than this, but you can see how it still is going to hold the texture. Whereas over here, when I'm mixing soft body into soft body, I'm getting the same kind of red violet, but it's more about that covering power, that flow. Make sense? Okay.
Yes, yeah, maybe Marla also, I just want to answer a question here about the basics acrylic. So that's a medium viscosity, and that is in the middle between the heavy body, the thicker paint for impasto work, and soft body.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes. So this is just a sample where you see both the soft body and heavy body with the same exact colors. So again, to show off the texture differences. Okay. And then
yeah, and actually, Marla, we have a really good question here about mixing the soft body and heavy body together. You know, heavy body on top of, I'm sorry, soft body on top of the heavy body. Will the paint crack while it dries?
Ooh, yeah, great question. If it were oil color, that wouldn't be recommended, but that's one of the fantastic things about that flexibility of acrylics. Because they're all equally flexible, you can put thin color on top of thick color and you won't have any cracking. They play well together on the same surface, whether they're mixed or whether they're layered in whatever texture order. It's great. Awesome question.
Thank you.
Okay, so I had let's see, sure, one more. So this is my little Van Gogh example here with the heavy body. So just to show that volume that the heavy body will give you. Okay. And so it's a really nice addition to any studio if you want some textural passages in your work. Now, I don't want time to run out before I show you guys and talk about our basics acrylic. So,
and Marla, actually, as you started to introduce the basics, I do just want to answer. So for heavy body and soft body, there's a question about the amount of pigment load in it. Heavy body and soft body do have the same pigment load. They just have different technology to be in different viscosity. And now I think you're going to touch on some of the differences between our basics range and then our professional ranges, speaking about pigment load. So I'll let you talk more about that.
Yes.
Hey, Marla and Christine, I just want to jump in real quick on this one because I know we're getting close to the end, but we will run over a little bit if necessary. Just want to let everyone know this will be recorded. It'll be in the chat at michaels.com/classes in 24 hours. And there will be a survey that you'll receive as well in 24 hours. And we'd love to hear your feedback because we will be coming to you next week with another continuation of this acrylic series. So thanks for joining us.
Yes. So basics, we call it our everyday acrylic because it's a really great place to start, and it can be a really great solution for a lot of different projects. So if you're new to acrylics, it's a good thing to pick up because unlike our professional series that have different price points, every tube has the same price. So that makes it easy and convenient. The palette size is a bit smaller, though for a student range, it's actually quite large in comparison to many others because there are now 75 colors, I believe. And we make it easy by offering in the primaries, we have a primary red, a primary yellow, and blue. I didn't happen to have those on hand, but just know that they exist. So that's easy to pick up from Michaels and just start painting right away, getting and practicing making secondary and other mixes. As Christina mentioned, it is more of a medium viscosity texture. So I'll squeeze that out here. This is the primary red. So you can see it holds its body a bit more than, I'll show it to the soft body. See that? But it's definitely not as thick as the heavy body. Okay, so it's in between. And so it will hold some knife stroke and brush stroke, but it also can work pretty nicely for small detail work as well. Now, why offer a student range? There are some brands that have the philosophy that, you know, artists should just buy an artist or professional series color and make mistakes as they go, and they'll eventually learn how to make it work. I like that Liquitex has a stance that, look, we're going to make a good quality, more everyday acrylic that is easier to obtain and afford. So you're not freaking out every time you squeeze paint out and you're like, oh gosh, that's $3 right there. I better not make a mistake, right? So you can squeeze out a good volume of color, practice your mixing, work on your ideas without sweating about how much it's going to cost. The trade-off is that the pigment load is going to be less in our basics acrylic. And so ideally, when you are ready, you graduate to one of the professional series, either the soft body or the heavy body, or of course, a mix of the two. And you could happily put all three of these on the same painted surface. Okay, they will work together. And I think Christina already mentioned, you could do a mural or whatnot with basics in the background and then add heavy body or soft body on top. That's perfectly fine to do. It's just when it comes for pigment per color per ounce, basics is going to have a lighter load than our soft body or our heavy body will. Right? So here's an example where you can hopefully see that more clearly. This is a color called Naples Yellow Hue. This is the Liquitex soft body color in the mass tone and undertone. This is a competitor brand, mass tone undertone. And then this is a Liquitex Basics mass tone undertone. Hopefully you can see that even though this is an everyday or more of a student range, it's still quite quality compared to this brand X, which was their artist series, right? So don't think that it means lesser quality. It just means that it's going to be kind of the down and dirty of what you need for getting good quality mixes and getting a lot of paint without sweating it every time you squeeze it out on the surface, if that makes sense. All right. So keeping with the sea theme, this was just a little painting I did with the basics using some of our new colors, the turquoise blue, and had to use some fluorescent pink. And this was done with a handful of colors. So you can obviously do all sorts of painting techniques with it. And let me just show you 24 new colors, which is a huge addition to an everyday paint range. But we're adding transparent colors. We're adding unique colors like this green gray. I love this iridescent graphite. It's probably going to be hard to see on here, but it has a little bit of a shimmer effect, as does the iridescent white. And then of course the fluorescents for those who like that 80s kind of look. But no, and it's obviously now that fluorescents have come back and I love them too, but they the basics has the fluorescents if you want them. So that is our new set. And I thought I would squeeze out some of the new colors to show you. But really, let's see.
Hi, Marla. It's Jeannie again. Just want to shout out to everyone. Just as Marla showed her lovely landscape, we would love to see your art creations. I gave you 2 hashtags, Make It With Michaels or hashtag Liquitex Find Your Flow. And we'll tell you more about that next week when we have Acrylics 102 and we'll cover the full range. Once again, everything will be recorded for you at michaels.com/classes. And we encourage you to do the survey, which you will receive tomorrow. So glad that we're getting such really interesting feedback from everyone. Thank you, Christina, for jumping in and contributing with these really relevant factual stats, and everything is coming along nicely. We're going to run over a little bit, but I think it's really important right now that we continue with the basics.
So yeah, thank you, Jeannie. Yeah, I always try to keep it in the time, but there's just so much wonderful stuff to share. But anyway, so the basics, these are 3 of the new colors. The first was the green gray, the turquoise blue, and then that iridescent graphite that I mentioned on top. I tend to be the type of painter, I often like working quickly, and I like to see what kind of effects the different colors can give me. And after playing with these, I just love how when this dries, that shimmer effect of the iridescent gray this color will soften a bit, and that shimmer will just show through. So everyday acrylic can certainly be incorporated to any of your acrylic paint work. If you love that green gray, or if you love that iridescent graphite, don't hesitate to put it in your mix with your soft body and heavy body colors. That's perfectly fine to do. Christina, Jeannie, anything else you wanted to say about basics? Yeah.
Yeah, if you could just cover really quick, Marla, we have a question about a Mars black and ivory black in basics.
Okay.
If we just have, it's another quick.
Oh, like what the difference is?
For that. Yeah, the difference.
Okay, so that's my next question, Christina. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess we could answer it really quickly, but there is a different tone to each of the blacks.
Yes. Yes. So ivory black and Mars black are colors that are available in lots of different ranges by Liquitex and by other brands. And what you'll notice is that the Mars black has a slightly cooler kind of undertone compared to ivory black, which has slightly warmer. I always feel like I'm mixing it up because for some reason, I guess because of elephant ivory, I associate ivory with cooler, but I have to consciously remember that ivory has a warmer undertone and Mars black has a slightly cooler undertone. So that's one reason why we're going to offer both in the basic series. So I don't know if that helped.
Thanks,
but it
Marla.
just has to do with, it just has to do with the pigments used and why we would offer 2.
Yep,
That's the other
that's great.
Yep. All right.
One more point. We have a question here if there's a paints that dry matte. So yes, actually next week you will be covering the class on acrylic gouache, which has a matte finish.
Yes, yes. Most of these, or I guess all 3 of these that we talked about today, have more of a satin sheen when dry, but definitely our acrylic gouache, which I will talk about on November 3rd. So after you go and vote, unless you've already early voted, come and sit with me and we'll talk about acrylic gouache and acrylic inks, and we'll have a great time doing that and getting into a lot of the details about those 2 ranges. But acrylic gouache is our lovely velvety matte finish paint range. So yeah, come and see me then. So mentioned our website here, Liquitex Find Your Flow. If you like tagging your imagery, that's a great place if you start to work with these colors, because really why have heavy body, soft body, basics? Because we could have one and you could just adjust it all with mediums, right? Well, no, it doesn't work that way. When you add mediums, you lose the color brilliance. Mediums are great, but there is the trade-off is that you're going to lose some of that color volume or that color brilliance. So when you have a mix of heavy body, soft body, or basics in your studio, you can take advantage of that fully pigmented color, but you can choose the flow that you want depending on the, whether you reach for soft body or you reach for heavy body. Okay, so our hashtag is Liquitex Find Your Flow if you really want to highlight what you've chosen in our range to play with. A handle to check out is @TFACNA. That stands for the Fine Art Collective North America. I'm a part of that. It just means that there's about 16 of us across the country that offer demos on these materials. And it's just a great place to check out for other technical information. So check that out if you're on Instagram. If you want to follow me, this is me, Marla Morrison Art. I would love to see you there. Say hi if you come over. And then Make It with Michaels is a hashtag you can do if you're inspired to make something with these colors. Just be sure and tag it with that, and tag me too so I can share it on my feed. And then I already mentioned next week, see me for acrylic gouache and inks. Be great. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. And I don't know if you're only seeing me. I'm waving to you, but I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.